Hi, it is absolutely a pleasure for me to really share ideas pertaining to shared value at this event that the student community at SCMHRD is organizing, and the event is called Shapath. I'm sorry that I'm not able to make it in person to the event because my schedule was not permitting for me to really come in and speak in person, and I'm so sorry for it. But I do look at the opportunity of coming in sometime in the future and talk to the students. So what we really are really trying to understand in the Indian context is how shared value can have a positive impact. Let's try to understand what are the debate that we are really having in the world today. The world today is predominantly saying that capitalism is a reflection of evil, or at least there are a certain set of people who think that capitalism is a reflection of evil. I somehow believe that this is the worst thing that we can actually think of. Capitalism is not a reflection of evil. Capitalism is the system which is going to solve the problems of the world. So if you really look at the societal progress in the world tomorrow, it is going to happen through various models that are actually going to get created. And when I'm saying models, it is about business models that are actually going to get created. How we are actually going to solve the problems of the society at large. So if you really look at it, it is about business models for the future. It is about looking at things in a newer perspective. It is about looking at things differently. And if you really try to understand this whole concept, what does it mean? The world has actually seen a number of trajectories in terms of like how people have actually helped the society or how corporates have actually looked at it. So I see that business has been engaging with society in three distinct ways. And what are those three distinct ways? One is like through corporate philanthropy, which has been fundamentally about giving back. So, and the second thing is about corporate responsibility, wherein it is about minimizing harm to society. And these two principles, they are interesting. This is where it is actually about community obligations or fulfilling community obligations, or it is about responsibility that businesses actually have. But there is a fundamental missing point out here. And the fundamental missing point out here is that we do not actually find business opportunities to solve social problems. And this is where shared value comes into existence. Shared value is about what? Shared value is about creating business models which are going to solve the problems of the world tomorrow. It is about meeting social needs, and they can actually be a source of profit. They can be a source of competitive advantage for the future. And enterprises across the board are actually looking at it. So if you really look at the world tomorrow, it is going to be about shared value. And I see it as an overarching concept. And if I go a little deeper into understanding what shared value is all about, shared value is, if I want to define it, is defined as policies and practices that enhance the competitiveness of companies while improving social and environmental context or conditions in the regions in which they operate. So what we are really trying to say is that wherever you operate, whichever geography you're actually operating in, you would try to find solutions pertaining to that geography. And this is going to be about business strategy per se. It is going to be about creating measurable social impact. And the basic thing is that we have to create a measurable social impact. It cannot just be something in thin air. So the problem as I see today is that a lot of us have been focusing on CSR and that CSR 2% that has been mandated. It is an important step, but that is not the end all of internally how we really look at it. Because it unlocks a certain level of money into the system, but it does not really unlock models for the future. So 2% will unlock from a private sector. The estimates are it is going to unlock close to about 18,000 to 20,000 crores in the system. But would it actually solve the problems? No, it will not. So what we really need to look at is models for the future. And so what shared value is and what shared value is not, and we need to understand that as well. So shared value is about strategies that simultaneously create value for business and society. But it is not about value which has been already created. It's not about person-centric. And it is more than balancing stakeholders or balancing stakeholder interests. So if you really look at shared value and go a little deeper, it is going to be about scalable opportunities that we have to find. It is going to be about impact that we can actually create through scalable opportunities. And we have seen examples for this kind of an initiative or for this kind of a thing in terms of number of ideas that have happened across the world. So if you go a little deeper, so societal and corporate success are going to be fairly linked together in the future. Or in fact, they have always been linked. In fact, corporates have tried to solve the problems of the world in some way or the other, or at least what you might say is they're trying to give a solution for something that they're actually trying to cater to. And if you really look at a little deeper into this whole idea of shared value, we need to understand that societal and corporate success is going to actually go hand in hand. We've had numerous examples from across the world wherein corporates have actually found success, and corporates have found success by solving the problems of the communities across the board. In fact, within the Indian context, we've actually had numerous examples of this sort. But before we get there, let's fundamentally look at one more thing: that why shared value is important. Shared value is important for a simple reason, that it actually creates a virtuous cycle. It creates a virtuous cycle of success. It creates a virtuous cycle of a combination of things which is going to solve a number of things. So what I really see is that it actually talks about social impact. It does really look at business impact, and it is about innovation, because at the end of the day, without a doubt, this is about adding a social dimension to strategy. Shared value is just not one of the things that I feel and very strongly believe that shared value is about strategy per se. It is about corporate strategy. It's about imbibing those set of ideas within the models that we are actually looking at. So shared value opens up new needs, new markets. It's about new value chain configuration. So what it means is that we need to create a strategic position wherein we are actually talking about social context. We are talking about social, or trying to solve societal needs. So companies will have to imbibe social dimension as we actually look at in the future. It will have to be an inextricable part of the value proposition for the future. And when you really talk about shared value, how many ways can we actually create it? I fundamentally see that there are three clear ways in which you can actually talk about creating shared value. And one of them is about reconceiving needs and products and customers. We have to really look at them in a different way. We have to look at the whole idea of demography in a different way. Redefining productivity in the value chain. In fact, very simply put, when you talk about productivity is very clearly one of the major issues that businesses face. And this has a very clear-cut association with the idea of competitiveness as well. So whenever we are actually going to use our resources better, we are able to solve the problems of the world better. We are able to give things to the world in a better way. We are actually able to reduce the costs of producing, or we are actually able to give services to people in a much cheaper format. And third is about enabling local cluster development. And we have had examples which are fairly strong from this point of view. In fact, one of the foremost examples that comes to my mind is an example from Mother Dairy. Mother Dairy is an amazing enterprise which actually looks at community development, which looks at redefining the value chain in one of the most fundamental ways. If you really look at Mother Dairy, 83% of the revenues that are actually collected by Mother Dairy are given back to the farmers. And this is where they're actually trying to develop the community itself. And even then, even with the kind of returns, or even the kind of revenues that go back to the farmer, the enterprise is profitable. This is a supreme example of how businesses can actually get created. In fact, Amul is another example, which is from where everything actually started. Vision Spring, as an example, is a very interesting idea, wherein this enterprise has tried to solve the problem of eyeglasses by creating a very simple model which has been scalable. So as of today, they have been able to actually impact close to about 280 million people across the world. And it's a model which is absolutely stunning, wherein they're not really doing philanthropy, but they've been able to make a pair of glasses for $1 and give it back to people. And they're operating in India in a very interesting way. Another clear example is an example of a hospital called Narayan Hridayalaya, wherein Dr. Devi Shetty created an extremely interesting business model, wherein he's been able to solve or take heart care to people, to the villages, to the poor. In fact, it is about asset utilization. It was all about how you actually look at the value chain of the business. If you really look at the business, what they've done is that for poor people, they're actually trying to use the assets towards the night. So that means they are actually able to look at paying customers in the morning, and they're actually able to utilize the certain asset in the evening or in the night, wherein it was actually a dead asset when it was not getting used. So it was about reconfiguration of the delivery process across the board. And they've been able to find a model which has been very, very successful. ICICI Lombard is actually talking about farmer insurance, which is an interesting one. Similarly, if you really talk about Unilever, Unilever is a beautiful example of wherein 23% of their distribution and effectively the distribution reach is actually happening through Shakti Ammas and Shaktimans. And today, even they are actually looking at it as an important part of the distribution mechanism, as an important part of what I would call as their business strategy. Incidentally, I still remember that we recognized Unilever for their business model and for their effect in the society in terms of by giving away a quota price. Similarly, if you really talk about another example, I would really look at Vatsalya as an example, wherein it's a hospital which has number of enterprises across different set of cities. So they actually operate in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, but they are talking about close to over 35 hospitals today. And each one of them is profitable. And what are the disease segments that they're actually talking about? They're talking about disease segments which are actually fairly important to be solved in those part of the cities. If somebody wants to go to a cancer care hospital, then you have tertiary care that is available in bigger cities. But out here, they're trying to look at models wherein they're able to give some good care for a certain set of problems. Like say, you might say that, okay, now we need to actually have prenatal and postnatal care. So they actually do an exceptional job of it. Osteoporosis, that is where they do an exceptional job of it. So if you really look at it, innovation is essential for creating shared value. It is about innovative business models. It's about looking at things differently. And going a step further, shared value is found at the nexus of business opportunity, corporate assets, and societal needs. And without a doubt, that's a way forward. So if you really look at it, the world tomorrow will actually have to look at the corporates for solving the problems of the world, solving the problems of the society. And shared value is going to be one of the inherent concepts that we will have to look at, and we will have to make this as part of the business strategy. Thank you, and thanks once again to the student community for inviting me at Shapath to speak on the idea of shared value. Thanks a lot once.